Hello. Are you a teacher or a leader and you are just feeling like you don't have work-life balance, or you're not sure how to look after yourself in the best way? Join me today as I speak with Will Monk, who is a head teacher in his second role as head teacher, new school. And he's going to share some really interesting insights with us about his new trust and how they promote well-being in a different way. I love it. So welcome, Will. It's great to have you with us.
Lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. So you mentioned that your trust supports sort of switching off it in half term, and they have various strategies to find balance in life, and you feel supported. Can you tell us a little bit what that is like, how that feels for you and how it is in reality?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think firstly, the thing that springs to mind is that my chief executive officer was a head teacher, and he's got a memory of what it was like to be a head teacher. So he can remember when, the parents are complaining. He can remember when there are safeguarding issues. He can remember when the results are not quite where they're supposed to be and the time is ticking and ticking and ticking. And I think that with that memory, he often has said to me that I worry about the head teachers. I worry about how they are, because I can remember waking up at 1, 2, 3, 4 in the morning. And it's no different actually in the classroom either. Teachers wake up at 1, 2, 3, 4 in the morning. So I think coming from that place where he's really got a sound memory of being a head teacher himself, he's able to implement a culture where, if I'm honest, I think it's first and foremost, it's communication. I didn't hear from the executive team or the head teacher over the half-term periods, but then following sort of basic things such as communication, you've then got every meeting, every dialogue that you have. Line management meetings start with, always asking how you are. They always care, but that is a genuine intent that they have as a result of that. So you don't feel that that's just something that someone's asked to put into a line management agenda. They genuinely care about that, and you feel that they're invested in you. And every single interaction that you have with every member of staff, and that they have with every member of staff, from head teachers to class teachers, always comes from a standpoint of inquiry. And I think that that's really important, that they're inquisitive, they're asking why things are happening, and that accountability is managed in a way that makes you feel that you have got autonomy, that you are valued within the classroom, that your opinions and your thoughts and actions within the classroom and within the school are really valued by them. So it just feeds down. But I think for anyone who probably is working their way up the scale, I would always say, make sure you remember, just never forget what it was like when you felt lonely. Never forget what it was like when the results weren't quite there, when we wanted them to be. And remember how you felt, more importantly, and lead people in that way. Because I find that teachers punish themselves enough, when things don't particularly go right. And I think that's got to stop. We do a wonderful job, and we impact the lives of hundreds and hundreds of people, if not more, over a career. And the balance is well in our favor of doing things really very well and impacting on people. So just remember that.
Yeah, I love that. And what teachers and actually leaders say to me is they all want to feel seen and valued and heard. And it really sounds like somehow your school, your trust has managed to embed that in a very solid way, that it's at the basis of everything that you do.
Absolutely right. It comes from the top down, but is felt impact-wise from the bottom up.
Yeah, I think there's the key, isn't it? Because if it's coming top down, then it's going to filter through. Because when I speak to teachers, they're saying to me, I'm trying so hard to develop some of these things, like reducing email amounts and that sort of thing. But actually, if it doesn't come from the top, it's a fight.
Absolutely. Agree more.
Yeah. So, Will, would you share some of your best strategies for staff who are listening to this and thinking, I don't work in a school or a trust like that yet. What can I do? How can I help myself? What would be your top tips for them?
I think first and foremost for me is try to be comfortable with what it is you can't do. At the end of the day, when you've got to see your family, when you've got to pick your son or your daughter up from school, or when you've got to visit your mum or your grandparents and so on, that when you go to those events, don't feel like there was always more that you could do, because that's perfectly normal. That you often say, they always say every child counts except your own. And that what that points to is sort of a collision between your family life and your professional life. And you've got to become comfortable with that boundary and that border, and being able to say, well, I've done enough today. And I guess that leads on to sort of allowing your conscience to be your guide a little bit, and say, I have done everything that I possibly can do today within the time constraints of that particular day. There are days where you're going to be there till 5 and sometimes beyond. There are also other days that you're going to be there, be out of the door at maybe 3:30, 4 o'clock. And I think in that respect, your work-life balance is a little bit transient, isn't it? Because over a week, there's going to be some late and some early. Be comfortable with that. Over the year, there's a holiday and there's a term time. And you can seek some solace in having a more transient mindset to sort of your work-life balance, knowing that there are times of real challenge, but I've done everything I can. There are times when I'm able to take a bit more time for myself and leave a little bit earlier. But your conscience through all of that tells you that, and I think teachers have a very, very powerful conscience when it comes to their students, and they've got to be comfortable. It's okay to see your family. It's okay. And what you find is a much better version of yourself when you have seen your family, when you have seen your children. One of the things that I always feel that people, certainly in education and probably business, do, it was an anecdote that I'd heard previously. A big business will, lose a multi-million-pound contract, and the boss calls them back into the meeting, or a teacher gets, has a bad day and the head of department calls them back in, the equivalent within education. And you analyze what's gone wrong. And then the multi-million-pound contract is won in business, and off they all go to celebrate at the pub, and they have a drink and they forget about the success. When in actual fact, maybe that should be the other way around. And when things go really, really well, while you're in that frame of mind, while you've got the positivity, that's when you do the analysis and you say to yourself, do you know what, today went really well. That class went really well. What was it that I did? Rather than actually, when things have gone really badly, 9X was so challenging today. What did I do? 9X were just challenging that day. It was period 5. It was windy and something just happened. It's those times when you're, when you had those challenging times, maybe go down to the pub, maybe go and have a drink with your friends, and maybe just forget about it and actually do the analysis on the things and try and replicate the things that have gone well, the successful things. Why did that lesson go so smoothly? Why did that safeguarding meeting go so well? Why were the outcomes fantastic? And forget about it a little bit more when things haven't quite gone your way. Try and make those positive things much more systematic and part of your work. And the last thing for me is sort of away from teacher, it's know what you like outside. For me, it's running. For me, it's going to the gym. And I think I take solace in those things. And when I do I notice when I haven't done them, more importantly. So you never regret going to the gym. You always regret not going to the gym or not working out. So even when I feel like I don't want to and I'm a bit tired, I go, because I never regret it. And that's okay. And I know that the work have a much better version of me if I'm able to do those things. But again, go back to what I said earlier, there might be a week when I've not made it, but that's also okay, because there's another week where I might make it 2, 3, 4 times. So that transient nature to what the job should be something that we hold on to.
Yeah, I mean, those are 3 fab tips. And the one that I really, I know that we all, when we get exhausted, things like the gym and running or getting outside always sort of drop off the planner. And actually, it was two secondary school teachers who came on this podcast a while back, and they have a life planner. And what they do is they look at the next week and they put the gym and they put a date night with their partner and they put certain things like that in first. And then the work has to fit in around it. And honestly, they were so buzzy and excited about their work. I think because they had that balance and they made it work. But the other thing that teachers say to me, which is linked to your second point, is we don't notice the things that go well because we get so drowned in what's not going as well as we'd like, or that lesson that didn't turn out like we thought. And even as teachers, when we have observations, you have, let's say 2 positives and then something to work on. And teachers tell me all they remember, all they take away is the thing to work on. The rest just goes. And I've just released a Burnout Busting Teachers Journal. It's a 52-week journal for teachers and leaders. Well, anyone really, but it is quite school focused. And what is a big focus in there is watching what's gone well. Because so often when I speak to teachers, and the first thing I say to them in the last week, what can you tell me that has gone well for you? And they can't. Because we don't think about that. So how do you help your staff to celebrate things that have gone well?
I think you've got to always be very genuine, because you can put strategies in place, certificates and recognition awards and various other things. But unless the staff know that it's genuine, those things can fall really, really flat. So that actually depends purely on the culture that you put in place. Because I've seen it done very well. I've seen it also done very, very badly. And it always comes back to whether the staff think that your intent is genuine and pure. But those things can be quite manageable. But really, it's about, I guess, aside from whether you can actually have a genuine recognition of stuff, it's noticing and doing those things and making well-being and recognition part of everyday conversation. I mean, you take there's very few other jobs that by sort of, 9 o'clock in the morning, you've had 30 to 60 different conversations, and I can't think of another job really that is like that. And if you think about the speed at which you move, before school, the period 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, break time, lunch time, and the sheer volume of interactions that you have with people, there are absolutely positives within that. And it's a case of training your staff almost to recognize them. It's noticing them yourself, but it's actually getting them to notice. It's sharing success stories with, certain students that, where you really powerfully meet their needs and have an impact on their outcomes, and not just their outcomes, but maybe their well-being and happiness as well. And so sharing real success stories frequently as part of your culture, recognizing staff, but realizing that the sheer volume of interaction that your staff are having day to day, way more than I do as a head teacher, is really making a difference to those lives and those students. And because it was a 2-minute conversation, it's very easy to forget, because you were just saying something in passing. Oh, well done on that rugby game the other night. You don't realize that maybe that student had a bit of a bad day. And you've made just in that, 10-second interaction, less than that, you've had an impact. And I think, it takes quite a bit of practice to realize, do you know what, I am walking around this school doing the best I can and giving the best version of myself, mainly because I'm looking after myself and I'm looking out for people.
Yeah, I love that. I just have one final question for you, if that's okay, because you mentioned before this podcast that you don't get bombarded by emails at your school. And, I'm constantly told that emails is a real drain for staff. How do you manage it?
I mean, as a new head teacher, and I did the same when I became a deputy head teacher as well in a previous school. I was new to that school as well, so it's the same principle. I refused personally to send an email to anyone unless I'd seen them face to face first. And so I won't send an all staff email. I've now managed to get around and meet everyone, but it was a real simple thing. I had a photo staff list, and I made my way to every member of staff, and I tried to. The idea and the ideal was to see everyone twice before I sent an email. But it doesn't matter whether you're a head teacher, head of department, or anything. If I send an email out to someone who's never actually met me in person, they're probably going to think, who's this guy? What's he on about? Here's an email already, and it's going to say a lot about me, and they're going to make inferences about what I've written. Whether I like it or not. But when they can see me face to face, and they can realize that, hopefully they can realize that my intentions are as they are, and my persona enters that email and allows me to email them. But actually, I still, what that became from doing that as an introduction to staff actually became part of my culture. And I'll now make sure that most of my conversation is now face to face. Rather than sort of via email. And it's also the tone and the content, isn't it? I don't want to send ranty emails to staff. If I've got a problem that needs addressing with the staff, then you need to go and have conversations with those staff face to face, because your intent can be seen within the interaction. So most of my emails are positive and about pedagogy and about things moving forward, not administrative, and certainly not negative. And then you suddenly start to question whether your email is necessary or not. Once you have those sort of values in place, it's like, well, do I need to send this? What's the impact of this email? And suddenly you find you don't need to send those emails. So it started that way. It moved around and it moved along and became that culture of, I just don't need to send this. And isn't it much better to go and see people?
Wow, I love that. And I think there's going to be a lot of school staff listening to this thinking, wow, we'd quite like to come and work at your school, Will. So we'll put a link in the blurb for the podcast to wherever people can find you if they want to follow that up. But I'm so grateful for all your time, Will, because I know you're a busy guy. And it will give a lot of, I hope, leaders some insight and teachers some hope that there are schools there where it is possible to have a really positive culture of valuing and hearing and seeing staff. So thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a really positive, fun experience.
Thanks for listening. I hope you took something of value from today. If you want to connect, I'm at rowenahicks.com, or I have a Facebook group, which is Preventing Teacher Burnout. So I look forward to connecting to you at one of those.